Hey guys, so in this video we're going to talk a little bit about deposits, and we're also going to talk about conditions that you may have as a buyer when buying a property here in Ontario. Deposit, there's a few little things about it that you should probably know. It's some of the cash that you kind of need up front when you're submitting offers. And conditions are in place in order to protect you as a buyer whenever you submit an offer as well. So we'll give you some scenarios in this video so that you have a much better idea of what that's all about. A deposit's always going to be required when you submit an offer. Conditions are optional. They're not something that you always have to put in. So it just depends on the scenario and what property you're trying to buy as well. There could be a financing condition, there could be an inspection condition, and there could be a condition on status certificate. Those are the main ones that we see here in Ontario. We're going to talk about that in this video. Okay, so let's start off by talking about deposits. Here in Ontario, there's no real minimum and there's no real maximum deposit you can put. What's important and what you should know about deposits is that it's called consideration in a contract and it makes a contract binding. It's all good and well that a buyer and a seller or a tenant and a landlord agree to terms. The price point, closing date, what deposit is going to be submitted, all that sort of stuff that gets written and signed upon. But submission of that deposit held in trust by a lawyer or held in trust by the real estate office is what really makes that contract binding, and it obviously puts some skin in the game on the side of the buyer or that tenant, and it gives peace of mind to that seller or that landlord that we have some cash from this person is serious about moving forward. Now, in terms of the amount that you submit for deposit, there's no real minimum or maximum. If this is a tenant situation, then it's typically the first and last month's rent at the minimum. However, sometimes as a tenant, you choose to submit more deposit, and that could sometimes be for negotiation reasons. Maybe you just want to beat out another tenant and get the space, so you offer a little bit more. Or maybe it's because you lack in credit, or you lack in employment, or you lack in some other area that gets evaluated. So you're giving a little bit more money to give the landlord peace of mind that you have some cash on hand and you're able to make your payments every single month. From the buyer perspective, you want to give a good amount of deposit. The reason is because it actually strengthens your offer when you have more deposit inputted. And let me give you an example. If I'm buying a condo at $500,000 in Toronto and I'm only putting in $1,000 deposit, let's say, for example, I happen to just change my mind. Let's say we have 2 weeks left to our closing and I say, you know what, things kind of got a little sticky. I'm not going to move forward with this purchase. As a seller, obviously, that's going to put them in a really bad position. They were 2 weeks away from closing and they'll have to put the property back on the market and find a new buyer. As a buyer, well, hey, I only lost $1,000. Maybe that doesn't affect you too much and you can walk away from the deal and that's it. So as a seller, you would like to see a much stronger deposit from a buyer because it gives you peace of mind. Let's give you the same example, except this time I put a 5% deposit, which is what I usually advocate and ask my clients to give if possible. I give $25,000 now for that $500,000 apartment. I'm firm. I'm in the deal now. Closing is in 2 weeks. I'm not losing as a buyer $25,000. I'm going to close on that condo and I'm going to move forward with this deal. That makes the difference there. And usually I try to tell people 3 to 5% as a minimum. And on the maximum side, there is no maximum. I tell people, look, if you do not need these funds from now until closing, and you know that these funds are going to be used 100% for the closing costs or for the down payment of this purchase, then give as much as you can. Like if you want to give $100,000, I've had people give almost $300,000 in deposit. Obviously the price point on that property was a little larger, but that gave peace of mind to that seller and actually got this good deal. And the guy had the cash, right? He was going to use it for down payment anyways. And so what's the point if it sits in his account or it sits in the trust account of a purchase he's going to make anyways? That's my point. So as long as you don't need that cash, you want to give as much as possible in order to make your offer as strong as possible. And of course, if we're putting pen on paper and we're submitting an offer to a seller, then we're serious. We want to buy this place. So there should be no issue there. On the minimum side though, I have seen as low as like $5,000, $3,000. But it really just depends in the maybe neighborhood or location that you're buying and the property that you're buying. You know, some sellers might be okay with that if they don't have a ton of other offers elsewhere. So there's a lot of factors to consider there when we're choosing what deposit is appropriate depending on our scenario. Okay guys, so I just talked about like what a minimum or a maximum deposit could look like. We have a better idea of what that's all about. We also do know now that the deposit is part of your overall down payment. If you know I'm putting $100,000 down payment down for this $500,000 condo, today I put in $25,000 deposit to hold it, to make that contract binding. I know that I need to give an extra $75,000 later for closing for my down payment, and this $25,000 is going to make part of that. So So just want to make clear that you understand that this deposit gets held and it becomes part of your overall closing costs and down payment later. Another thing you got to know about your deposit is that if you do have an accepted offer, let's continue with this theme here, $500,000 condo, I submitted an offer, it got accepted, I said I was going to give $25,000 deposit. Usually that $25,000 deposit is supposed to be submitted within 24 hours after the offer is accepted. So today is a Wednesday. Thursday before the bank closes, I should be submitting a deposit. And there's different ways to submit that. Sometimes you make a bank draft and you take it directly to the office. Nowadays though, it's becoming a little bit more easy. Since COVID, we had to figure out ways to operate and reduce contact. So now most brokerages, they give us information of their account at any particular bank. So let's say for example, the seller's bank account was with TD. If I'm a TD client myself, I can go to TD and say, hey, TD, I want to send $25,000 to this TD account. And you just give them information that was provided to us and they'll do that transfer for you and they'll give us a receipt for that. The other option is I go to my BMO bank, I'll make a bank draft for $25,000. Then I go to absolutely any TD, show them the information of that bank account for TD and they'll deposit it and give you a receipt for that as well. So that's commonly what's going on right now in terms of submitting deposits, and it usually is 24 hours after an offer is accepted. All right, guys, so the second half of this video is related to conditions, and this is when you submit an offer for purchase. Sometimes you'll have some conditions in place depending on the scenario. So the first one I'll talk about is financing condition. Typically, our buyers do not have a financing condition in our offers because we do our homework prior to, getting serious and going out to seeing properties and making offers. We'll get our pre-approval beforehand, so we'll know what our max budget is, how much down payment we're putting in, what our monthly rate could be. We have all those questions answered before we even go to a property and submit an offer. So for that reason, we usually don't have a financing condition. However, if you're a brand new buyer to us and we haven't gotten that far yet, and there's some property that you really like, and just based on a conversation, you can kind of just, let us know that you have enough savings, you have good income, very low debt, very good credit. As long as we kind of have that conversation, we might go forward and submit an offer. But just to be careful, we might be submitting an offer with an inspection condition. Typically, we usually apply maybe 2 or 3 to 5 business days long. So we get business days for us to actually go to our lender, submit our documents, give them information about this property that we're looking to purchase, including the agreement of purchase and sale. You can even go ahead and submit your deposit. All that stuff can be done. And within those 5 business days, our lender has to let us know if they approved us for this particular house, for this particular condo, and this mortgage. And that's the benefit there. If we come out with bad news and we don't find a lender that's able to fund us, then because we have this condition in place, we can actually back out prior to those 5 business days completing, and we'll get our deposit back in full. Let's say in this case, $25,000. Okay, so that's one type of condition. Another one is inspection. So typically inspections are mostly done on like freehold properties, detached homes, semis, townhomes. Not as often are they done on condos. However, you can do that if you want, all depending. Maybe if it's an older condo and you saw some things that you had some questions about, it's something that you can do. You will pay on the lower side for a condo, maybe under $300 or under $400. And for a detached house, you might be paying a little bit over $400 for an inspection. For an inspection, we usually book an appointment with that property for about a 3-4 hour period. The inspector will do many things. They're going to take a look at the electrical, the plumbing system, the HVAC system. They'll briefly look at the furnace, the AC, their appliances, your lights, your outlets, your attic, your roof, the exterior, if it's a brick house or stucco or whatever the case is, the grading of your house. A lot of different things that they check up on. That's why they have such a big window. And so the report is pretty in depth. You're going to get a list of items. You want to focus on the major items versus the small wear and tear items. And it's an option to maybe even renegotiate with the seller, all depending on what you find. And again, depending on what you find, this is a condition. So if you feel like you can't negotiate terms based on what you found and you don't want to continue with the purchase, you can back out at that point as well. You'll get your deposit back in full and you can continue on. Now, if you do get a list of items and they were all on the smaller side and it's not enough for you to kind of back out of the deal, you want to move forward, you can waive that condition, just like you can waive the financing condition because you know you're good and you can continue with the purchase. Now, the third thing I wanted to talk about is status certificate. Now, this is very unique to condo purchases. This could be a condo building or a condo townhouse. A status certificate is a document that every condo corporation is going to have, and it's going to give us information about the savings that building or complex has for common element expenses. And it may also give us indication if there's any increase in maintenance fees coming, if there's a big issue with the common areas of the building, or something like a big repair that might require extra money from the owners of the corporation, such as yourself, the new buyer. It's also going to give us information if it's been in litigation. So if there's been any owners within the corporation that have sued the corporation because they've had issues at the building or complex, like those are all the things that we can find out in this document. Now, I don't review that document myself, and neither do you. The onus is not on us to kind of give you some information about it. We actually give this document over to our lawyer who's helping us with our closing. They review it and they give us some information based on what they read, and it'll give us clear picture as to if we want to move forward with this complex or this building. Okay, so same thing goes here as well. We have two options. You can either waive your condition because the lawyer reviewed it and everything is good, or you can back out of the deal, get your deposit back in full if you find out some things that were questionable and that don't make you comfortable enough to continue. Okay, so you do have options. All right, guys, so in this video we covered deposits. It's the minimum maximum deposit that may be required of you, who holds that deposit, what is the importance of the deposit, it holds our contract and makes it binding, and I give you some options. I let you know that it is part of your overall down payment and it is part of the purchase process. We also talked about conditions and the three major conditions that you find here in Ontario: financing, inspection, and status certificate. You have a better idea now in terms of when you would use these conditions and if they're applicable to you or not, depending on the housing type and your situation. So I'm hoping that this gave you a lot of information about purchasing here in the GTA. Of course, we do specialize with first-time home buyers that have a lot of these same questions, but even if you're a repeat buyer, these are things that you don't do often, so you probably forget. And we try our best to update these videos to make sure they're current with today's marketplace. All right, guys, Daniil here from the King Realty Group. Thanks for sticking along in this video, and you have a great day.